Howard, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thomas Allen Crockett, born September 4th, 1940, in Albert Lee, Minnesota, to Walter and Hazel Crockett. A man whose life was beautifully lived. About a year prior to my dad's passing, shortly after a big rain, he and I were running around the county, checking out the river conditions at some of my dad's old favorite fishing holes. We visited a number of his old favorite spots that day, but when we drove up to one called Finley Bend, well, Dad wanted to step out of the truck and check things out in person. So we did. We walked around a bit, but ultimately found a place to sit on a nice big old log. As we were just sitting there watching and listening to the water flow, I asked my dad if he could recall any moments in his life that he considered to be precious or great. You see, at that time, my dad's memory was fading. Sometimes having a simple conversation, well, it could be a real challenge. Frustrating for him, really. You could tell that he knew what he wanted to say. It was on the tip of his tongue, but he just couldn't find the words. Dad had good days, and well, Dad had some days that were not so good. But on that day, sitting on that log, in the beauty of the Lord's work, my dad was having a really good day. In response to my question, my dad looked up at me and he said, I remember one night in October 1981, I was out on my back patio, staring up at the sky. He said my eyes were full of tears. I was feeling afraid. And even though I had a wonderful family and so many great friends, he said I still felt all alone. I was wondering what life was all about. And just then he said, I saw the most beautiful, brightest shooting star fly across the sky. He smiled. He says it wasn't just a normal shooting star. He said it was the Lord calling me, telling me, Tom, I am the way and the light. When my dad looked at me, with big, beautiful brown eyes, smiling, full of tears with joy, he said, I got saved. Well, we hugged, wiped our eyes, laughed, and just sat there quiet, listening and watching the water flow by. Well, then, much to my surprise, my dad continued to share. He said, I was blessed with a beautiful, loving wife. Then he leaned into me, gave me a little bit of an elbow and said, don't tell your mom. He said, but I'm pretty sure I got the better end of the stick on that one. He said I was blessed with two great kids. He said that any parent would be proud of. Wonderful grandchildren, and at least 3 great dogs. I said, hey Dad, I said, how about your music? And he said, yeah, I had some musical talent. He said, I really loved playing with my friend. And then it was one of those times where it was on the tip of his tongue. You could tell he knew what he wanted to say. So I gave him a little help. I said, Howard? And he said, yeah, my brother Howard. He said, that guy is really something special. What a blessing. Then he said, he said, my dad was really the musically talented one. He said, he could really play that sax. He said, heaven must be alive with music. Then Dad went on to say, he said, I was sure blessed with a lot of wonderful friends. Smiling, shaking his head, he said, so many great people, so many wonderful times. Well, after a few more minutes of just watching and listening to the river flow by, Dad says, "You know, Sunbeam," that was me. He said, "I'm sure there's a lot more," he said, "but that's all I can remember for now." Well, in an effort to keep the conversation going, I asked my dad, I said, "Hey, do you by chance remember teaching me to hit a baseball over the course of an entire weekend in the backyard of our home in Salt Lake City?" Well, he thought some more, and could tell he didn't want to disappoint me, but he ultimately shook his head and he said, "No, I'm sorry, I don't remember that." And then he looked at me with that cheesy Chester cat grin of his. Those of you who've seen it know it. And he asked, he said, "Did I help?" Well, with a proud smile, I reminded him that after that weekend, I went on to hit 2 home runs in my very next Little League baseball game. Well, my dad smiled from ear to ear, and he said, "Really?" Surprised. And I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's great." And I said, It was, Bob." Then I asked, I said, "Dad, do you remember when you and I worked together assembling my sister Tracy's new tricycle?" Well, he thought for a moment, and it was so precious. You could just see the light go off, you know. He just looked as proud as can be, and he said, "I do remember that." He said, "And I also remember," with a big grin, and again his eyes full of tears, he said, "I also remember the look on your sister's face when she saw it for the first time." "Happy times," he said. And I said, "Yeah, Pop, they really were. A life beautifully lived." To me, my dad's finest quality was his patience and ability to listen, to absorb and to offer a point of view based on quiet, measured wisdom. Duty, decency, reliability, honor, dignity, respect, loyalty. These are all qualities that my dad not only held in high esteem, but he did his very best to practice them every day. And Dad was a serious man, and he was a disciplined man. But if given the chance, he could never resist the opportunity to share a smile or a laugh with a friend or a loved one. Does anyone here by chance remember the Boatnik Parade downtown Grants Pass, say mid-70s? No? Does anyone remember what appeared to be actual cavemen gathering up random people for no apparent reason, putting them in a big caveman-style cage in the back of a trailer, just rolling down the street to a destination unknown? Well, Thomas Allen Crockett, he was one of those cavemen. Just doing his civil duty in support of his community on behalf of the Grants Pass Active Club. Well, I'm going to share with you a little-known secret about those times. You see, my dad and his fellow cavemen, Bob Morrison, Jake Ailes, Dean Pratt, and others, well, they took their roles very, very seriously as cavemen. How seriously, you ask? I'll tell you. Well, these guys got together and they made a pact. They made a pact refusing to bathe or shave for 4 days prior to the event. I guess 5 days would have just been too much. So not only did they have the big, ratty-looking caveman wigs and tiger skin outfits, those boys smelled pretty authentic as well. I'll never forget Saturday morning when my dad was practicing his caveman character, roaming around the house in gorilla-type motions, grunting, itching, like a caveman would. Like it was yesterday, I remember my sister Tracy hiding behind my mom in the front room as my dad was practicing. And you could just tell by the look on her face, she was going, "What happened to my dad?" Well, with that, my dad swooped in, super caveman style, to my mom and said, "You want big caveman kiss?" Well, with that, my sister screamed. She ran behind her big brother for cover. My mom, smiling from ear to ear, with tears in her eyes from laughing so hard, well, she plugged her nose and she gave her smelly caveman the kiss that he'd asked for. Great memories. Precious moments from a life beautifully lived. In closing, I pray that you hold in your hearts the love my dad had in his heart for each and every one of you. On behalf of our family, I want to wish you all of the Lord's wonderful blessings. And in an effort to continue to make my father proud, I would like to leave you with one of his favorite verses, Romans 12:12. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. Thomas Allen Crockett, lovingly accepted by his Savior, Jesus Christ, November 13th, 2019. Thank you.